In this video, I'm going to tell you a method of how to recruit Halsin Minthara, which involves having the Rite of Thorns be completed. Subscribe to the Linus Wilson channel. We give you the secrets to crush Baldur's Gate 3. So since patch 1, Larian has made it very clear that they do not think you should be able to recruit Halsin and Minthara, and have made it substantially harder to do that. But we've shown you on this channel about the sheep method, where you can turn Minthara into a sheep and actually have the good outcome for the Tieflings, so all the Tieflings survive, and you'll be able to recruit Minthara and Halsin in that playthrough. But that's a bit involved, and maybe you wanted to have more of a chaotic bad playthrough. This is kind of the route for somebody that wanted to do that, but also have Halsin and Minthara in their party. Well, there's less of the glitchiness of the sheep transformation and dominate beast and all those other spells in this. The ordering of this really matters, and if you get the ordering wrong, or if you do it slightly wrong, then it all goes pear-shaped and you won't get Minthara. First thing is that you want to have not done anything in the goblin camp, and you've not killed Kaga, you've not stopped the Rite of Thorns by confronting her with the Shadow Druid's evidence, so you've not done any of that. It's also important, if you do have a character that triggers the Druid Tiefling conflict, that you turn off opportunity attacks. If your character attacks any Tiefling or any Druid, then Will and Karlach will leave your party. You want to go into the inventory and that part of the menu that has opportunity attacks, and I would turn off all those things that you need to be prompted for those. Don't do it automatically. Then the easiest way to do this is to have one of your companions. It could be a hireling. I'm having Karlach do it in this case, and I've taken off all her armor because I'm going to let her die, because that's just quicker than trying to escape the grove when the craziness happens, when everybody's attacking each other. All we're going to do is we're going to push the statue. So just do a push. We don't need to throw it. We're not going to pick it up. We're not going to put it in our inventory for sure. We're just do a push to the statue. And if it falls off, I don't think that matters. If it stays on, I don't think that matters. Just as long as it's not in your inventory, and so that the druids can finish the Rite of Thorns once they've wiped out all the tieflings. And then I'm turning it up to tactician mode. Make sure that Karlach dies quickly here. And Karlach and Will stay in your party after this, right? So they're not going to be, they're already, you want to have, if you want Karlach in particular, you need to do this after you've recruited Karlach. And then once Karlach dies, do a long rest. You can resurrect her before the long rest. And then you should come back and the Rite of Thorns should be completed. Check that the Rite of Thorns is completed and there's vines covering up the Emerald Grove. So I've done this like every way wrong. And part of the ways wrong that you can do this is if you trigger the Rite of Thorns by going to the Mountain Pass or into the Shadow Cursed Lands. That won't work, and Halsin will be dead when you come back. Another thing that won't work is that after you trigger the Rite of Thorns by pushing the Idol of Sylvanus, it must be true that Halsin has not been sprung from the warg pens in the goblin camp. You have not. It must be your first conversation with Halsin for this to work. Otherwise, you will not get the dialogue option talking about the Rite of Thorns. Next step is to go to the goblin camp and talk to Halsin. So in the goblin camp, you can really kill people in the warg pens with impunity, and that's pretty much what you need to do to spring Halsin without aggroing the rest of the camp. Before recruiting Halsin, I might have killed Princess Gut, but you need to just talk to, and who also goes off in a side room, which is really easy not to aggro the whole camp. But I did not kill all of the goblin leaders, and definitely I didn't aggro Minthara. That's who you do not want to aggro. So you talk to Halsin and tell him, if it's the first time you talk to him, you can tell him that the Rite of Thorns is completed and he will leave the goblin camp. So the big problem with Halsin is he'll insist that you kill all 3 goblin leaders before he will leave, right? And if he does not leave, and you go through the Mountain Pass or you go up the Grimforge elevator into the Shadow Cursed Lands, he'll end up dead in the Warg Pens. That's what happened after patch 1. So you want him to get out of the Goblin camp, and he'll do that if he's told that the Grove is basically sealed off and he has nothing to do, and he'll want to camp with you, and he'll start becoming a camp follower. Now, he's not a full companion yet. You can't get him to be a full companion until you partially lift the Shadow Curse by getting Thaniel through the portal in Act 2. Now Halsin's your follower. You can play the game normally however you want to, as long as you do not aggro or kill Minthara. So don't knock her out, don't fight her, don't get her so that she's fighting you, so that she's hostile. And then go through the Mountain Pass at some point, or up the Grimforge elevator into the Act 2 region of the Shadow Cursed Lands. Once you do that, Minthara will be transported from the Goblin camp to the Moonrise Towers, where she will be judged by Ketheric Thorn, right? And so that's how you recruit Minthara. You go to the Moonrise Towers, go to the basement where she's being tortured, spring her out. If you get her out of Moonrise Towers, she'll ask to join your camp, have her join your camp, and then she's a member, so she's a follower. And if you have already recruited Halsin, you can have by getting the loot to Art, or if Art was dead, resurrecting Art and getting him to talk about Thaniel after he's dead, or after he's heard the loot, or he's seen the loot. His loot, which is it is held by Malthus Storm the Surgeon in the House of Healing. That is in his inventory. So you can get it from his dead corpse, or you can pickpocket him to get that. That is necessary if Art is still alive. And that will trigger that portal, which you have to defend for like 5 or 6 turns without the portal being destroyed. And then after that, basically Halsin is a companion, and you can go adventuring with Halsin as a companion. So you can spring Minthara before or after you have Halsin as a full companion, but there's a real big catch. And the big catch is that if you ever go back with Halsin and Minthara sharing a tent, if you ever go back to the Act 1 region or the Grimforge, so if you go back to the early access regions, the Grimforge and where the Goblin camp is, for example, then Halsin will die. So it's very important that when you recruit Minthara, you are totally done with everything you want to do in the Act 1 Grimforge region, right? You can go back to the Mountain Pass, but the early access regions you cannot go back to. If you go back to, Halsin will be dead. If you resurrect him, he'll say the goblins and the drow killed him, as if he were still in the goblin camp. It's a glitch. I think it's a bug. It's going to be patched at some point probably, but this is a way to get a save in here. I mean, this is obviously you're pretty much plotting the Tiefling's death here, but getting away with it without not doing it directly. You can't fix Karlach's Hellion Heart, so you can't do that quest. Damon's going to be dead. This is just basically if you wanted to do kind of a neutral to bad playthrough, but also wanted to have Halsin and Minthara in that single playthrough, then you can do it. You know, you're not going to get as much XP as if you were killing all the goblins, but I think you can kill most of the goblins just as long as you don't aggro Minthara. I only killed 1 goblin leader when I tested this, but maybe you could get away with killing 2. So good luck. Be careful with the steps, because it's it'll go wrong if you get the steps wrong. I think the final thing is that I've not tested this into Act 3, so it's conceivable that Halsin dies when you guys move to Act 3, but maybe not. So it may be just kind of an Act 1 thing. The Act 1 just kind of triggers that. But it's conceivable if I played all the way through and I got to Act 3 that Halsin would die immediately when we get to Act 3. I have no idea. So good luck. Let me know your experience when you test this. And I want to thank CrAzEd MiKe 9907 for helping me with this very tricky method. And I'll link to one of his videos in the description.